Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christen Price. I'm legal counsel with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Welcome to today's live discussion, Taking on Big Porn, Exposing the Abuse, Sex Trafficking, and Harms to Children. We'll have some presentations today, followed by discussion and some question and answer time. So just a few quick notes before we get started here. This is in webinar format rather than a Zoom meeting. So please feel free to interact with each other in the chat. And then there's also a Q&A feature. If you have questions for the speakers, please don't use the general chat for questions because we might miss them. We have several powerful advocates with us today for this important conversation about the pornography industry's abuses. Rachael Denhollander is an attorney, author, advocate, and educator who is recognized as a leading voice on the topic of sexual abuse. Rachael works to bridge the gap between survivors and the society and institutions that may have failed them, forcing audiences to ask the question, what is a girl or boy worth, while equipping them with the tools to answer, everything. Mary Sharpe is an attorney and current visiting scholar at the University of Cambridge, whose work focuses on scientific research about love and the impact of pornography on health, relationships, attainment, and criminality. Mary established the Reward Foundation, Love, Sex, and the Internet in Scotland 6 years ago to educate professionals and the public about the impacts of pornography use. Laila Mickelwait is the director of abolition for Exodus Cry and the founder of the Traffickinghub campaign, a global movement to shut down Pornhub for enabling and profiting from the rape, sex trafficking, and exploitation of women and children. Rachael, Mary, and Laila, we are so delighted to have you with us today, and I know we're all looking forward to this conversation. So we will go ahead and start with Rachael's talk.
Welcome to the Coalition to End Sexual Exploitation Global Summit. We're joined today by Rachael Denhollander, who's an attorney, author, advocate, and educator who's recognized as a leading voice on the topic of sexual abuse. You can see her bio down below. We're so grateful to have her and her voice, especially on violence and pornography today. Rachael?
Hey everyone. I'm so sorry we aren't able to be together in person this week, but thank you for taking the time to be here today and this week. Changing the culture of abuse across the world often feels like an insurmountable task to me, but it's during times like this when I can see so many incredible advocates literally from across the world coming together to have these conversations and to learn together how we can fight for survivors and stand against abuse that gives me hope. So please hear my thank you for being here today. Over the course of this conference, you are going to hear incredible discussions on all the many things that we've got to do to push back against sexual abuse and exploitation. But right now for this topic, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to ask you to take a step back and to look below the surface, to go beyond the what do we do and start asking the question, how should we think? Because here's the reality. You and I can talk all day long about our actions, what abuse and exploitation look like, and the policies and the steps we need to take to make it stop. But below our actions are ideas, and driving our advocacy is convictions. And this is true not just for positive actions, but for negative ones as well. If we want to stop the actions of sexual abuse and exploitation, we have to start with the mindsets that are driving it. If we want to motivate people around us to intervene and stand against abuse, we have to begin with their convictions. And this means that you and I have to start asking the question, what is shaping our beliefs about this issue? What is affecting the culture's mindset towards sexuality and personhood? We have to talk about pornography. For decades, pornography has been sold literally to the public with promises that it represents sexual freedom and liberation, that it's a harmless way to get your sexual fix however you want to get it. And culturally, we want to believe that. And we want to believe that for two main reasons. First, we want to believe porn is harmless because porn makes money, a lot of money. It's a $97 billion industry with about $12 billion of that alone coming from the US. And secondly, we want to believe that porn is harmless because for well over half the population, the sexual gratification that individuals get when they consume porn feels good. And we want to believe it's safe. Yet at the same time, we are wrestling with the reality that rates of sexual assault and harassment are at epidemic proportions. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually assaulted before they reach adulthood. If we had a disease that was ravaging on average 1/5 of our children, the world would come to a halt while we tried to figure out how to save these kids. And yet, that is exactly what is happening with sexual assault. And we do not treat sexual abuse like the life-changing epidemic that it really is. So we need to talk about pornography. And here's what you need to know. We know that the average age of exposure to pornography is somewhere between 7 and 11 years old, with a significant number of children reporting being exposed as early as age 5. By the time kids reach age 16, 90% of our children report seeing porn. And in a recent study done by Bitfunder, a security technology company, it found that children under the age of 10 account for more than 20% of online porn usage. We now know that more than 2/3 of teens and college students seek out pornography at least once a week. And porn sites receive more traffic every month than Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined, with analysts estimating that more than 1/3 of the material downloaded off the internet is pornography. In total, 70% of men report viewing porn at least once per month, and so do 20% of women. We are living in a society that has divorced sexuality from personhood, that has mentally and physically trained a generation to view themselves and others, often a woman or a child, as nothing more than means to a sexual end. And it is not a large step to go from thinking of someone like a sexual object to treating them like one, or not caring very much when you see them treated like one. Oftentimes, we don't think it's that big of a deal when a woman or a child is treated like a sex object, because for decades we have normalized thinking of them that way. And today's pornography takes this even further by normalizing violence and portraying it as pleasure. A 2010 analysis of the most watched porn videos found that almost 90% of them contained violence and sexual aggression, primarily against women, and that teen porn was the fastest growing category of pornography. But in these videos purporting to show teen sex, these violent videos, 90% of the females on the receiving end of sexual violence were depicted as experiencing pleasure during sexually violent videos, including videos with forced penetration, rape, and beating. Barely over half the subjects in non-violent videos displayed pleasure. And while female porn consumption is steeply on the rise, we now know that the impact of porn is very disparate based on the gender of the person consuming porn. While porn increases violence and sexual aggression in both genders, in females, porn consumption is linked to an increase in submission to sexually aggressive behaviors, because it signals to these women that violent and harmful sexuality is not only normal, it's expected, and that if they're not deriving sexual pleasure from violence, there's something wrong with them. This is not only linked to significantly higher likelihood of a girl becoming a victim of sexual abuse, it is also linked to her acceptance of rape myths. The same myths that will keep her believing that abuse is normal, that it's her fault, and that it's what it's expected of her. In male consumers, we see the opposite. Among male porn consumers, studies have consistently found that male consumers are significantly more likely to become violent and aggressive in sexual encounters. In a recent study of children ages 10 to 15 that spanned 3 years, it found that youths who reported intentional exposure to X-rated material became 6 times as likely to self-report sexual aggression. In studies of college-age males, it found that men who consumed pornography had significantly higher rates of sexual aggression, and that men who viewed porn expressed significantly more likelihood to commit rape if they could ensure they wouldn't be caught. By contrast, these same studies also found that consumers of pornography expressed significantly less willingness to intervene against sexual harassment or abuse. When we accept the propaganda that it is normal and healthy to view and treat women and children as sex objects who exist for personal gratification, and we normalize separating sexuality from personhood, it should be no surprise to us that we reap a culture that treats women and children this way. or that doesn't care very much when they are treated this way. Pornography dehumanizes the individual. And this helps explain to us why a recent survey of children ages 9 to 17 found that children who view pornography are significantly more likely to report poor emotional bonds with their caregivers. We have raised a generation steeped in a sexual mindset that people exist for their gratification. And when we do that, we raise a generation that shuts down the ability to emotionally bond as humans and individuals. And when that capacity to bond as a human is lost, they have also lost the capacity to feel the damage that they have done to someone else when they act aggressively and violently. Not only have we normalized this mindset and behavior through justifying modern porn production and consumption, we have facilitated an addiction to it. When pornography is viewed and a physical sexual release is obtained through that viewing, it creates a flood of chemicals in the body and the brain that trains the body to respond to certain types of stimuli and shuts down the body's ability to respond to others. National and international studies of porn users are consistently finding that the younger a child is exposed to porn, the higher the rates of porn consumption as they grow, and especially the higher rates of child porn consumption. Pornography is clearly linked to decrease in sexual satisfaction during normal sexual encounters, so much so that the need for medication for erectile dysfunction is skyrocketing in the younger age brackets. And numerous studies, including research that analyzes the brain waves of men in relation to pornography, have shown consistent patterns of desensitization and habituation, signs of addiction to violent pornography. And like most addictive behaviors, this addiction frequently leads to escalation, including escalation into child pornography. Contrary to what some are now asserting, pedophilia is a learned behavior. And escalation from violent pornography into child pornography is well documented, including recent analysis which found that out of porn consumers who collect child pornography, no one, not a single individual, collected only child pornography. Every consumer of child pornography was found to also collect and have first collected hardcore mainstream pornography. And perhaps what should strike us the most is that many of these impacts, including higher rates of sexual aggression and less likelihood to intervene in sexual abuse, are linked not just to violent pornography, but studies have also found they are linked to attendance at strip clubs and consuming mainstream media that sexualizes and objectifies individuals, particularly women. If we want to truly change how people behave and what they care enough to stand against, we have to begin with how they think. We have to begin with hard conversations about technology usage and sex work and the porn industry, and yes, our entertainment and media. We have to begin with hard conversations about what we put before our kids and ourselves. Hard conversations about our own habits. But aren't our children worth these things? When I stood in court before a judge and I asked the question, how much is a little girl worth? It wasn't a rhetorical question. Because every time we make a decision, this is really the values analysis that we're going through. We are pulling out a scale. And on one side of that scale, we are putting something that we value: money, social conformity, personal comfort, personal habits. And on the other side of that scale, we are putting people, the people who will pay the price for the decisions we make, and we are deciding which one we value more. The porn and the entertainment industry has literally put a price tag on our children and on the people around us, and it has conditioned us as a culture to do the same, and we have allowed it. But if we value the people around us, it is time to begin having those hard conversations about what is shaping our thoughts and our convictions and our mindset. And I'm grateful that you are here today, because now is the time to start having those conversations. Our children and the people around us are worth it.
Rachael, thank you for that powerful statement, bringing us back to the reality that all of this is ultimately about our values. Mary's now going to share a bit about the research on pornography's harms with us.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be presenting at the NCOSE Global Summit this year. And I'm going to talk today about internet pornography and the adolescent brain. Now, there'll be no pornography shown, but some of the descriptions might be a little bit graphic, but I'll warn you of these in advance. Now, just let me get my screen organized. Can you see that? Arrow. Can you see this screen okay?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yep.
There we go.
There we go. Can you see it okay? Right.
Yep.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, yes, we can see it.
Okay, cool. Right. A key element of the talk is going to be about neuroplasticity. And if you're not familiar with that term, the word is made up of two parts. Neuro, that refers to neurons or brain cells, and plasticity, meaning the brain, like plastic, can be shaped or molded by the environment and what we think or do. And I'll be focusing on our dramatically changed environment and the effects of chronic overconsumption of sexual novelty, delivered on demand and in endless supply. So here's an overview of what I'm going to be dealing with. We're going to look at the unique features of the adolescent brain, consider the potential links between internet pornography use and a range of physical and mental disorders, and explain why it's necessary for children, parents and professionals to learn about brain plasticity so that they can help people avoid and overcome problematic porn use. Now, where's the next? So let's do some brain basics. Here we see an image of the brain as it develops from the age of 5 to 20. Legally, a child becomes an adult at 18 years, but from a neuroscience perspective, the brain is still maturing until the mid-20s. Notice how the colour changes over the years. As the brain matures, there's a change in the amount of grey matter, that is the nerve cells or neurons, and a change in white matter. That's a fatty white substance called myelin that insulates part of the neurons and speeds up the signalling between them. Here's another view of the brain changes over the years. Each brain contains billions of neurons that produce neurochemicals. And these neurons are constantly sending signals to each other, passing on the neurochemicals at the synapses or gaps between the nerve cells, thus forming a connection or pathway. And there's an expression, nerve cells that fire together, wire together. Nerve cells start to proliferate rapidly from birth to early adolescence, so around 8 or 9 years of age, when they're at their maximum. You can see this in the middle image, the early adolescence. At this point, the brain starts to prune back unused nerve connections and strengthens the most used ones. The last image shows fewer nerve connections, but they are thicker and stronger. Now, the brain is very efficient and works on the principle of use it or lose it. And this is why the way a child uses the brain during this period of accelerated learning is so important. Do they focus on schoolwork, sport, social interaction, music perhaps? Or do they isolate with gaming, social media, and porn videos? This window of accelerated learning slows down once the brain matures in the mid-20s. Let's look at the reward system or the risk and reward pathway. This is an ancient pathway, and it's shown in purple in the slide. It provides a link between the limbic system, the wanting part of the brain where we feel emotions like pleasure or pain, and the frontal cortex, in particular the prefrontal cortex, the thinking and reflective part of the brain. Now, during adolescence, the brain improves integration between these different regions as it matures. The prefrontal cortex is the last part of the brain to develop and does so only slowly during adolescence, trying to catch up with the emotional part of the brain that is developing much faster. And this creates an imbalance of power in these different parts of the brain. This reward pathway drives all behaviour, and it's mainly fueled by the go-get-it neurochemical dopamine. And here you can see the ventral tegmental area, or VTA, on the right side, and that is where there's a key source of dopamine is produced. So for instance, when we see something that triggers our attention, for example, someone we really like, dopamine shoots along the pathway to the reward centre where it builds up, and it sends super fast signals to the prefrontal cortex, and in return receives signals via other neurochemicals to advance, retreat, or stay where we are. Now, this return feedback system helps to put the brakes on impulsive behaviour, but it only slowly develops during this adolescent period. It's also impaired with problematic use of the internet or any addictive substance. The poor connectivity between these brain regions results in a lot of impulsive and anxiety-driven behaviour, and it causes parents and other adults to shake their heads a lot as they watch their dear children grow up. So, what does this reward system do? Well, the reward system evolved to drive us towards natural rewards, things that we need for survival. So food, love, friendship, novelty, so we can learn. But at puberty, sex shoots to the top of the list of what grabs our attention. And this development is behind the desire for sexual exploration and independence. The reason is because reproduction of our genes, in other words, making babies, is nature's #1 priority. Even if they're not ready to have babies or don't want them, the reward system drives children from puberty onwards to focus on sex. And it can be a big distraction when they're trying to do schoolwork and exams. And it's all fueled by this go-get-it neurochemical dopamine. And we'll look at dopamine's role in just a moment. But first of all, we're going to look at the difference between natural rewards and supernormal ones. As we noted, the reward system evolved to drive us towards natural rewards like food or sex. But today, technology has created rewards that are industrial strength stimuli or supernormal. They produce extremely high levels of dopamine in the brain and can override our natural level of satisfaction or satiation. They can rewire the brain to crave higher and higher levels of stimulation so that natural rewards seem bland and boring by comparison. Look at bonding. It should be about real people, real love, feelings of safety and trust, but that's replaced with virtual friends. Or look at achievement. Real achievement in the real world, or do they go for high scores on internet games? Or sex. Now that should be about touch, smell, genuine connection, real intimacy. Instead, porn users become voyeurs, watching others have sex, rather than learning about it for themselves at first hand. And they're learning unsafe sex in a tenderness-free zone. Now, supernormal rewards make the companies behind them extremely rich, but they can throw our body and brain into turmoil. So let's look a little bit more at dopamine, this very important neurochemical. It has many functions, but here are just some. So dopamine is the neurochemical that drives the reward system. It's all about anticipation of pleasure, the wanting, not the feeling of pleasure itself. The feeling of pleasure or liking comes from natural opioids in the brain. Adolescents produce more dopamine and more opioids than adults or children, and are more sensitive to them. And this can lead to more risk-taking behaviour, especially when hanging out with friends. Now, dopamine is also crucial to memory formation, and it helps us remember both the positive and negative experiences. Dopamine surges for violation of expectation, novelty, or shock. And shock produces adrenaline too, which combines with dopamine to create more sexual arousal. Porn sites provide endless amounts of shock and novelty to keep users coming back for more. And it builds up in the brain's reward center with each game, porn video, or drug session. The more dopamine produced, the more value we give to that reward, and the stronger the cravings and desires we feel for it, whatever it is. It really focuses our attention. It's also very important for sexual arousal and orgasm because they induce higher levels of dopamine and opioids than any other natural reward. Now, because the brain becomes, I'll just go back a moment, because the brain gradually becomes used to a certain level of stimulation, it becomes desensitized to it. The brain doesn't like too much of anything, it's always seeking equilibrium. But when it becomes desensitized to one particular stimulus, it needs something more intense, more shocking, taboo, and new to fire up again, and will drive the user to seek it out. Now, for instance, fake incest porn, or faux cest, as the porn industry deceptively brands it, is extremely popular because it is taboo, and it may be influencing the increasing levels of child and child sex abuse currently being experienced within family groups. Now, given that reproduction of genes is nature's #1 priority, you will not be surprised to learn that sexual arousal and climax induce higher levels of dopamine and opioids than any other natural reward, as I've mentioned. I'd like to point out here what PMO means: porn, masturbation, orgasm. So while even just looking at porn videos alone can be risky for some, for most it is the interaction with what they see, i.e. masturbating to porn, that reinforces the learning and causes the neuroplastic changes. This is not to condemn masturbation, but rather to be aware of its combination with porn. Binging on porn is the issue, not masturbation itself. Now, a typical behaviour of young men too is edging. Now, that means building up the level of arousal to just below the point of climax, then lowering it again and repeating that while watching scores or even hundreds of videos, waiting for the perfect video to finish on with an orgasm. The problem is each new video causes a spurt of dopamine to surge towards the reward center, building up dopamine and cravings for more. So, to summarize this section, here are the unique features of the adolescent brain. There's an imbalance between the emotional and reflective brain. It produces more dopamine and opioids and is more sensitive to them. The synaptic pruning fine-tunes the adolescent brain. It strengthens the most used nerve connections and clears out unused ones. Higher risk-taking, especially when amongst friends. And there's a general desire for sexual exploration and independence. Basically, nature's helping them prepare to leave the nest. So, why is porn an issue now? You might be thinking, porn's been around since the caveman days. Or we watched a bit of it when we were young and it didn't do us any harm. So let's look now at what has changed in the environment and assess what change that is having. So when did the environment start to change? Well, in the mid to late 1990s, this gentleman here, Professor B.J. Fogg, set up his Persuasive Design Technology Lab at Stanford University. And it's that forms the basis of the attention economy. There's so much available for free. He developed techniques based on the latest neuroscience and psychology that deliberately changes users' thoughts and behavior without their awareness. They target the reward center of the brain with dopamine to stimulate cravings that keep users coming back for more. This results in addiction to porn, gaming, gambling, social media, shopping, and so on for increasing numbers of users. And just recently, the World Health Organization has now recognized addictive disorders in a lot of these areas. Moving on, let me just see where we're up to. Oops, sorry. Of all activities on the internet, porn has the most potential to become addictive, say Dutch neuroscientists. Now, the problem for adults is that most young people think that internet porn is the best thing ever. It's a solution to boredom. It's a solution to sexual frustration, loneliness, stress, and it's free, with hours of endless fun through edging. It's a manual for sex. It reduces inhibitions and barriers. It's sexual minority friendly, and it provides inspiration and ideas for partnered sex. What's not to like? What they don't know is how it's affecting their brain over time. So what are they actually learning from porn? Now, for the faint-hearted, the next slide is a bit strong in some of its descriptions, so I'm warning you. We're going to look now at the content of mainstream porn videos based on research done way back in internet terms in 2010. The researchers, Anna Bridges and others, assessed 50 of the most popular VHS videos, and these were the most common activities. I've also added in typical risks associated with these behaviours that are often acted out by porn users. So gagging, that's forcing a penis into someone's mouth and to throat. And this can result in vomiting. There has been a huge rise in throat cancer and HPV virus found in the throat. Choking, so asphyxiation and physical assault, or in porn speak, airplay, or sometimes they call it breath play. Rough anal sex, and this is resulting in anal fissures, incontinence, and in some cases people need anal reconstruction because they've burst their sphincter and they need nappies for everyday living. Ejaculation in the face. Doctors are now seeing people with gonorrhea of the eye and the mouth. Spitting on the face is disrespectful and it's misogynist. Anus to mouth interaction. Well, there's huge germ transfer with that because people don't usually wash. And is usually accompanied by things like eat your own shit, bitch. A whole load of nasty stuff to strengthen this idea of male dominance and female submission. It can also be in gay videos too, where you've got the more dominant males treating more feminine men in a very dominant and submissive way. Hair pulling, so it's painful and it's dehumanizing. Verbal abuse, this lowers self-confidence, and racial abuse, which is misogynist and lowers self-confidence. So this is has only got much worse in the years since then. If we think that was bad in 2010, then what's available for free on Pornhub and the like are even more violent, and there are millions of videos available streaming high-definition videos on smartphones and tablets. So what kind of learning is actually going on? Well, the experts call it sexual conditioning. Sexual conditioning is what you consciously learn, and kids are thinking, oh, so that's what I should do. This provides kids with a sexual manual or sexual scripts for how to act. The biological mechanism for this is probably related to mirror neurons that we have in our brain to help us learn much of our social behaviour. Monkey see, monkey do. Now, parents or teachers might say, well, we'll just tell our kids this isn't like real sex. I'm afraid that's not really going to be enough because of the other changes, the unconscious brain changes that take place over time. This is the unconscious learning, because what kids are learning is this turns me on, and eventually I need porn to get aroused because of the physical brain changes that are taking place. Porn is a form of brain training or neuroplastic change. Porn conditions the brain with high surges of dopamine and opioids in the reward system, as I've explained. And as the brain desensitizes to that level of stimulation, It needs higher levels of arousals to brain changes that can be hard to undo. As one guy on a porn recovery website said, "Alien is the word I'd use to describe how I felt when I tried to have sex with real women. It felt artificial and foreign to me. It's like I've gotten so conditioned to sitting in front of a screen jerking it that my mind considers that to be normal sex instead of real, actual sex." Now, what we've observed over the years is that there are two patterns of use. There's the individual pattern where people isolate and they tend to be very secretive, but the risk with this is that they can escalate over time to weirder genre, including to illegal material, and as Rachel pointed out, to child abuse material. The other pattern is acting out with another person, often with coercion and violence, because that's what they're learning and that's what they think ordinary sex is. Now, the next slide is a little bit graphic, and it's one man's experience as he escalated through different genres. "I'm 19 years old and have been watching porn since 14. I thought I was some sort of deviant, but the porn just kept escalating. Anime, she-male, gay, anal fisting, then urination, and then animals. Recently, I was watching incest porn and I stepped over the unthinkable line, a video with illegal activity in it. I saw about 10 seconds of it. I had a raging hard-on from the dopamine and masturbated even though I was disgusted with what I saw. Whenever I watched regular porn, it would get me off at first, and then I would start the hunt again for something more extreme, as if I couldn't control myself." So the question is, how much porn is too much? Well, it's actually hard to say because every brain is unique. And what we can suggest is that we have quizzes on the Rewards Foundation site that people can do to see if they have developed brain changes that might be commensurate with too much porn use. And these have been developed by top psychiatrists and porn researchers. So people can assess them to see if they have developed problematic use. One of the challenges is there's no clear signal to say when we've used too much porn, as you would do with, say, food or alcohol. You'd be sick, we know, with it too much. We haven't evolved a mechanism yet because the internet is too recent. Now, brain changes increase over time, even with moderate use. So even with, say, 3 hours a week, so not even addiction, just moderate use, or weekend binging, according to a German brain scan study. And an Italian study found that 16% of high school seniors who consume pornography more than once a week experienced abnormally low sexual desire, compared to 0% of non-porn users reporting low sexual desire. The research confirms that users' problems correlate most closely with factors such as the number of screens opened, so that indicates variety, and the degree of arousal, that is an indication of addiction, not so much with the time spent viewing. So, how does a healthy adolescent brain develop? Well, there's an increase in grey matter and signal speed from prefrontal cortex to the limbic, the emotional brain, over time. And that means there's more impulse control, there's more compassion for other people and creativity. At the same time, there's usually a decrease in grey matter in the limbic brain, leading to better control over emotions, anxiety, and impulsivity. But with the brain changes from watching porn an average of just 3 hours a week, what we're seeing, and this is what the brain scans are showing, is there's a decrease in grey matter in the prefrontal cortex, resulting in less impulse control, less creativity, and less compassion for others. At the same time, there's an increase in grey matter in the limbic area, particularly in the amygdala, producing more anxiety, depression, stress, impulsiveness, and very narrow thinking. So what's porn's impact on attainment? Well, according to this study from 2014, boys with an advanced pubertal stage and boys high in sensation seeking more frequently used internet pornography. Moreover, an increased use of internet pornography decreased boys' academic performance 6 months later. Now, there's been no research done on girls' academic performance so far, and girls are increasingly using pornography because the porn industry is targeting them apart from anything. But there's a chance that it has a similar effect as it does on boys. But one thing's for sure, there are no studies showing that porn use improves attainment. So, look at now at, let's see, some of the mental health issues in young people. Brain fog and an inability to concentrate, loneliness, social anxiety and elevated stress response, depression and lethargy, increased negative body image, suicidal ideation, comorbidity of mental health disorders, co-addiction, and constant sexual fantasy. Let's have a look at the physical changes. The physical issues. Over-rubbing of genitals. Sexual dysfunctions including erectile dysfunction. A lack of sexual desire and loss of interest in real partners. This is while rates of sexual activity are plummeting amongst young people. I mean, it's just unheard of. While erectile dysfunction rates are soaring in the same group. I'm going to play you now, by way of summary of these brain changes, a little video that pulls together what these changes are and how it's affecting young people, and also requesting that governments need to do something to improve the situation.
Gabe started with porn at 12. By the time he was 22, he couldn't get it up even for a girl he was really attracted to. That's called erectile dysfunction, or ED, and it used to be pretty rare. For decades, only about 3% of men under 40 had it. But from 2010 on, rates skyrocketed. Now they're up around 35%. There's a reason for that steep increase. Since 2006, it's become very easy to stream free video porn online and access even hardcore stuff with a few clicks. Effects took a while to show up, but basically the data says more hardcore porn and fewer hard-ons are connected. After all, guys haven't suddenly become nervous about performing. They could get it up okay for porn, just not with partners. And when they quit porn, their erections come back, but it can take months. No wonder. Brain scans show that compulsive users react to porn like addicts react to triggers for cocaine use. And in a BBC Three survey of young people, 14% of all female and more than 30% of all male participants believed they were actually addicted to porn. And there's more. Research showed that watching a lot of porn made users 6 times more likely to be aggressive in a sexual relationship. No more boners and issues with your partner seem like an awfully high price to pay for internet porn that's supposed to be free. And that's a lie anyway. Free porn is a business. It helps to sell pills to fix your limp dick. It wants you to pay for premium content or sex aids. And it sells your personal data to advertisers so they can target you better. That's why governments need to step in and require age verification for online porn, just as with alcohol, cigarettes and gambling. When you turn 18, you can make your own decisions. And you'll have a better chance of enjoying actual, real sex with a partner. Until then, skip the porn, save your boner. For help, go to...
Now, I'm happy to say there's been a very good interview done with John Carr, who's one of the leading people in the UK trying to drive age verification legislation here and in other countries. And we were recently involved in a conference with 29 countries last month, and NCOSE were involved in that to try and encourage more countries to develop the legislation that will help reduce the risk of children stumbling across pornography. So having depressed you all, I think, with all the dreadful things that porn can do, particularly to our young people, what education do we need? What can we do to try and turn the situation around? Well, I'm very happy to say, in honour of NCOSE, the Reward Foundation is launching its brand new lesson plans today. And so if you look at our website, you will find out more about those lessons. They are available in American language and international English, and are available. There are 6 core lessons and an extra one free that deal with internet pornography and sexting and a lot of the issues. There's lessons on neuroplasticity, the adolescent brain, so all the things I've just covered, including what makes for a loving, trusting and intimate relationship, and lessons about the law and sexting, lessons on consent. While they're good, they're totally insufficient for dealing with problematic sexual behaviour, says a psychiatrist who works with sex offenders. This has come through in lots of the work we've done, just teaching about consent. Consent is so easy to manipulate, and even if someone consents to images being passed on, we're seeing a huge rise in things like revenge porn, where young guys and young women too for that matter are posting sexual images that were given in trust but were then posted on the internet without consent and can lead to a lot of trouble. We say educate yourself and others, including politicians and journalists. It's really important that journalists know more about this, because unfortunately the porn industry propagandists are monopolizing the mainstream and are getting in very fast with journalists and dictating the narrative. So it's important that we help educate journalists and politicians about the reality of the brain changes and that these problems are happening. So we recommend this book, Your Brain on Porn, by Gary Wilson, Internet Pornography and the Emerging Science of Addiction. We also have our free Parents Guide to Internet Pornography, which we update on a regular basis, and that covers a lot of the material you've probably heard from some of the other excellent speakers at the NCOSE Global event. We've worked hard at the Reward Foundation over a number of years to produce our inexpensive but fully resourced lessons, and we hope that they will be useful to you and others going forward. They're even useful for parents during lockdown if you're homeschooling. So thank you everybody for your attention, and good luck about learning about this very, very important topic. And thank you, NCOSE, for giving me the opportunity to share what we've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. So much good information there and a huge need for further education. So really excited to hear about the launching of the lesson plans today. Now we will hear from Laila about her work against Pornhub.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And today we're going to be talking about Pornhub. And before I dive into the presentation, I'd love to share with you a short animated 2-minute video that we created to raise awareness about the campaign. And we're very excited that as of now, we have about 30 million views on this video. So I'm going to go ahead and play that to get us started.
Pornhub is the largest and most popular porn site in the world. Owned by the mega porn parent company MindGeek, Pornhub averages 42 billion visits per year. That's 115 million visits every day. Most of the content featured on their site is user-generated, amassing 6 million new videos each year. That would take 169 years to watch. Pornhub has become the global epicenter of internet pornography. The company makes hundreds of millions of dollars through ad revenue, data collection, and premium subscriptions. And it's blatantly enabling and profiting from rape, sexual abuse, and child sex trafficking. Like the missing 15-year-old girl who was found after 58 videos of her rape were posted on Pornhub. Or Rose Kalamba, the 14-year-old, who the BBC reported was kidnapped at knife point, raped and assaulted on camera for 12 hours, and had to beg Pornhub for months and threaten legal action to remove the videos of her rape and torture. Or the images of a toddler being sexually abused, found through an investigation by the Sunday Times. Or the 22 women who were deceived and coerced by the producers of Girls Do Porn, a popular Pornhub partner channel, whose owners now face a federal indictment for child pornography, sex trafficking of a minor, sex trafficking, and sexual abuse. These examples only begin to scratch the surface of the sexual crimes found on Pornhub. According to the Internet Watch Foundation, in only 2 years, they processed and confirmed 118 cases of child rape and trafficking on Pornhub. These aren't models or actresses playing a role in a movie. These are real videos of women and children being sexually abused, violated, and traumatized. And Pornhub is deeply complicit. They have no system to reliably verify the age or consent of anyone featured in the videos it profits from. The largest porn site in the world makes it insanely easy for users to upload videos of real sexual violence. And in doing so, they forever memorialize the trauma of their victims, all for the profit and pleasure of Pornhub and its users. It's time to shut down Pornhub and hold them accountable for the rape, trafficking, and sexual abuse that they enable and profit from. Share this video and sign a petition at traffickinghub.com.
Great. So some of the content that I'm going to be sharing is sensitive. None of it is explicit. However, I just want to preface with a trigger warning about the nature of the content. So the issue of harm, Dr. Gail Dines has said, for too long, pornography has been framed as a moral issue. But from over 40 years of empirical research, we know that it is an issue of harm. Pornhub is in the business of commodifying and monetizing violence against women and children. And so that is what this presentation is about. So who is Pornhub? Well, Pornhub is the largest and most popular porn site in the world. In 2019, they had 42 billion visits to the website. That equals over 4 million visits per hour, 115 million visits per day, and 6.8 million videos uploaded to the site. The United States is the #1 consumer of Pornhub's content, by far, the largest consumer in the world. They had 39 billion searches performed in 2019, and almost 12 million comments were made on the site, some of which we will review later. So this is a site for primarily user-generated content. So what that means, I'm sure most of you are familiar with it who are hearing this and have ended up on Pornhub either on purpose or by accident. But it is user-generated content, meaning it's pornography that people are filming with their iPhones, in their bedrooms, in hotel rooms, at frat parties, in cars. These are not primarily, quote unquote, professionally produced pornography videos. Now, Pornhub is owned by the parent company MindGeek, and the top dog, without question, says Dr. Dines, is MindGeek. She estimates that between 70 to 90% of the most viewed pornography in the world is coming from MindGeek. So just to give you an idea of the extent of MindGeek's monopoly over the industry, you can see some of their holdings here in this slide. So on one side, you see the Pornhub network. Pornhub is their flagship, the most popular of their sites, but they also own many other tube sites such as RedTube and Tube8 and YouPorn and others. They also own production companies and movie studios such as Brazzers and Reality Kings and others, reality sites which are cam sites, and also they have managed sites. Even Playboy's digital distribution comes through MindGeek. So in the Pornhub network, there are hundreds of what are called content partners. These are partner channels. And we have discovered in recent times that a number of these are actually sex trafficking operations. You can see Girls Do Porn there on the side of the screen. And as we'll discuss in a moment, again, this was a sex trafficking operation that was on Pornhub for many years. I'll also mention that even as of last week, there was a news story that broke that said Check Casting, which actually had in total, the company who owns Check Casting had almost 1 billion views on Pornhub, and they were also a partner channel, and they were discovered to be, again, a sex trafficking operation. So Pornhub is one of the top 10 most popular websites in the world. It's an enormous website. And Pornhub is making hundreds of millions of dollars. This company is generating an extreme amount of profit from the videos that are hosted on this site in a variety of ways. So first, there's premium subscriptions. For $9.99 a month, you can access the real rape and trafficking of women and children ad-free through this site. There's advertising. Of course, there's ads that are placed all over these videos, on the side, on the top, on the bottom. You know, sometimes before you play a video, you'll have to watch a 30-second Pornhub commercial. And then sometimes in the middle of a video, you can press pause and there will be an ad that pops up right in the middle of the video as well. So these are very highly monetized through advertising. They're also collecting and monetizing user data. So when you go on Pornhub, you agree that they can deploy web beacons and other information harvesting technology to harvest your information, including your IP address. Model Hub is also a way that they're monetizing videos through this program. They have now 100,000 participants in this program where they actually directly monetize the sale of this content. And Pornhub, in essence, acts as a pimp in these transactions where they get 35% of the sale of these videos. And I would note that the case of a recent 15-year-old girl who was missing for a year, and she was found in 58 videos being monetized on Pornhub, being raped and abused. And she was verified into the Model Hub program. So Pornhub was directly profiting off of those videos of her abuse. And I would ask, where is that money? So Pornhub is the household brand for porn around the world. They have spent an enormous amount of effort and money, promoting their brand worldwide. You know, they've done billboards in Times Square. They've done pop-up shops for Valentine's Day. They've walked in New York Fashion Week. They've even done campaigns where they try to, promote themselves as an ethical company, doing Save the Bees and Clean the Ocean and donating masks to hospitals for coronavirus and things like that. They have stores around the world where people are repping the brand of Pornhub, selling apparel and other things like that. They have a strong social media presence that often actually targets children blatantly. You can see that here with the Baby Yoda meme that they've recently done. 10 seconds after my parents leave the house, it says, with the reflection of Pornhub screen in the eyes of the Baby Yoda. So as you can see, I mean, Pornhub is, the world's most popular site for porn. And they've kind of, branded themselves as a cute, even ethical company for mainstream porn that you can trust. However, you definitely cannot trust the content that is on this site, because if you just peel back the layers just slightly, you'll see the real dark underbelly of this website that intersects with serious amounts of abuse and crime. So there are 6 core areas of criminal behavior that you can view on Pornhub, that Pornhub is actually enabling and profiting from on the site. So first, there's human trafficking. There's child sexual abuse material, CSAM, also known as child pornography. There's blatant rape and sexual assault. There's revenge porn, non-consensual recordings or spy cams, and also filmed prostitution. So I'm going to show you some case studies, some examples of the way that these crimes are being promoted, profited off of, and enabled on Pornhub. So first of all, we have human trafficking. Again, this is the example of this 15-year-old girl from Florida. They actually matched the face of her trafficker from the videos and to surveillance footage from a 7-Eleven in order to rescue this girl. There's also the case of Girls Do Porn that I mentioned earlier, where women were tricked. They were coerced, they were deceived into performing these commercial sex acts on camera. And Girls Do Porn was one of the most popular partner channels on Pornhub for 8 years. They actually had 600 million views of those videos and almost 800,000 subscribers. And they kept that channel up even after the case of 22 of these women was filed suing the company Girls Do Porn for their exploitation. Pornhub left that partner channel on the site. And those women won a $13 million lawsuit, and now there's a federal indictment out for the ringleaders of Girls Do Porn for child trafficking, adult sex trafficking, and others abuses. So there's blatant child sexual abuse material on Pornhub. There's a significant amount of it. Just to give a small sampling of what is out there, you know, the Internet Watch Foundation did confirm these 118 cases in only 2 years. They said that half of those were category A level abuse, meaning penetration and sadism. You can also see a real example of a title of a video of CSAM that was recently on Pornhub. It was actually uploaded 4 different times by 4 different users in a matter of months. You can also see people blatantly advertising child pornography in the comments all over Pornhub, saying trade child pornography, and you can see that in tens, if not hundreds of comments all over Pornhub or more. Then you have real rape and sexual assault. So we have, you know, misadventures of a drunk girl. You have, you know, with tags such as teenager, young, drunk. These are women that are blatantly intoxicated, clearly in a position where they are not able to consent to what is either happening to them or to have that uploaded and monetized on Pornhub and made downloadable to 4 million visitors per hour. You can see the download button on every single one of these videos, where users are enabled to actually download, to own this trauma, and then to be able to upload it at any time in the future of that victim's life. They constantly live in fear that their assault is going to be re-uploaded to this site. They're going to have to re-experience the trauma of knowing that people are both profiting from this and also getting pleasure from their abuse. I just yesterday saw a video of two women who were young women, and they were drugged. They were clearly drugged. They were completely unconscious. Their bodies were completely limp. And their rapist, actually to prove that this was not staged assault, was opening their eyelids to show their glassy eyes and putting his fingers on their eyeballs to show that they would not move, they would not flinch. They were completely unconscious, and they were being raped and assaulted on Pornhub. And those videos are currently still on the site, and many others like them. And there's what's called revenge porn. This is also called image-based abuse, and I call it a form of terrorism against women, because it is used to control, intimidate, and terrorize women when their videos are uploaded to this site, again, made downloadable, and often keep coming up in their future. I spoke with one victim who just said that she was, you know, dropped out of college because of this, and she said, you know, maybe in the next life I could be successful, because I know that if I achieve any level of success, these videos are going to come to haunt me. And it completely devastated her life. And they're blatantly all over Pornhub. This was the case of Tiziana Cantone, who actually committed suicide because of one of these videos being uploaded to Pornhub. And even recently, you can see there's a private folder containing what clearly appears to be the video of her exploitation. Then there's spy cams, hidden cams all over Pornhub. And these are where perpetrators and predators will actually install secret cameras in toilets of, you know, even high school girls' toilets, and changing rooms, and adult women's dressing rooms, and lingerie shops, and things like that, where these women are recorded without their knowledge, and those videos are uploaded to Pornhub. And there's an abundance of this illegal content all over the site. And how does this happen? Well, Pornhub does not verify consent for the videos that are uploaded to the site. So they don't seek to find out, do these women that are in these videos actually want to be in these videos? Do they know they're in these videos? And often the answer is clearly no. There's also filmed prostitution. I mean, you can even find videos that of women that are indicating clear vulnerabilities, which we know indicates trafficking, all over the site, where girls are being exploited and women are being exploited and used in commercial sex acts and prostitution. And those are being filmed. Sometimes they know they're being filmed, and often they don't even realize that they're being filmed and uploaded to the site. So then you have to ask the question, what facilitates these criminal acts? Well, first of all, you can upload content to Pornhub anonymously. And I know this because I've tried it, and so have many others. You can upload content to Pornhub with only an email address. And it takes under 10 minutes to create an account, email account, register, and then you can upload content to the site. So there is no age or consent verification. They're not checking a government issued ID to make sure that those in these videos are not children being raped and trafficked and women being assaulted and abused on the site. But not only that, you can get verified on Pornhub with that blue check mark by your name by only showing a picture of your face and a piece of paper with a username scribbled on that piece of paper or on your body. Again, no form of valid identification. They also allow uploads from unknown users. So this is a video of an actual rape that took place in India. And you can see, again, unknown user. There's signs that they're ignoring clearly all over the site, indicating abuse, assault, and child exploitation. There are countless comments where people are saying, this looks like a 14-year-old child. She looks like she's 12. She looks like she's 15. This is underage. This is assault. This is sex trafficking. And those comments can be on the site for months and even years with no action being taken on those videos. There's also private folders where millions of images and videos are being traded on the site. And we have evidence that there is illegal content being enabled and traded that way. They've also launched a Tor mirror site on the dark web. So Pornhub has a dark web mirror site. They also enabled cryptocurrency for more anonymity in paying for this content. And they also launched their own free Pornhub VPN. And a VPN is something that hides your IP address. And your IP address is essential for law enforcement to be able to locate perpetrators. So to me, it seems clear that Pornhub is protecting those who seek to exploit, and they're exploiting those who should be protected. So what are we doing to take action against MindGeek and Pornhub? Well, we've started the Traffickinghub campaign, which is a non-religious, nonpartisan effort to hold the largest porn site accountable for enabling and profiting off the mass sex trafficking exploitation. So this catalyst for the campaign was an op-ed that I wrote in February that kind of exposed some of these things I've talked about that was met with outrage. It was followed the next day by the BBC releasing completely unplanned the story of Rose Kalemba, who at 14 years old was taken at knife point, raped for 12 hours, and the videos of her abuse were uploaded to the site. That went viral in 41 languages around the world. And the combination of these things, I really think sparked outrage and motivated people to take action. They called on me to start a petition, which I did. And as of today, we have almost 1.7 million signatures on this petition. And we have a campaign with the clear goal of changing the narrative about Pornhub, destroying the lie that this is a website, that this is some ethical, cute porn site that has videos of consenting adults when that's not true. Hold them accountable, both criminally and civilly, and challenge the businesses that do business with Pornhub. You know, we want to do this through, like I said, civil suits and also pressuring government officials to take criminal action, not only in the United States, but around the world, because this is a global company. And to that end, we've seen some breakthrough in some letters to, for example, the Attorney General in the United States demanding a federal investigation. And also in Canada, we saw a letter from members of Parliament to Justin Trudeau calling for a federal investigation of MindGeek. We also have partnered up with some organizations such as NCOSE, who's done an incredible job doing an email campaign to target Pornhub and challenging American Express, Visa, MasterCard, and Discover with their relationship with Pornhub and calling them to disengage, just as PayPal did last year. And so we're going to continue putting the pressure on with those business relationships. We have a coalition now. We have over 300 organizations that are represented and endorsing this campaign, and we'd love to see even more. And trying to organize the movement. There's been people who want to protest. We had a protest organized shortly after this campaign started on International Women's Day in front of the MindGeek headquarters in Montreal, which was very exciting. And I've just been hearing from many others that they want to continue protesting. And there's some organizations that have decided, even as of this Friday, that every Friday from 11 to 1, they'll be protesting outside of every MindGeek and Pornhub office around the world and trying to get others to join in on this global protest. It's been featured, this campaign has been featured in now over 300 articles in 35 different countries. So the word is definitely spreading internationally. And we just want to see this continue. We want to keep the pressure on and continue this movement and keep getting signatures on this petition and spreading the video and spreading the message until this goal is truly accomplished of Pornhub being shut down and its executives being held accountable for what they've enabled and profited from. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Wow, Laila, 1.7 million signatures, that's remarkable. Thank you for all the work you've done to bring these human rights abuses to light. And I'm really glad you used the phrase terrorism against women, because that's exactly what this is. We're going to move into the discussion portion now, and I'm seeing lots of good questions coming through. Just as a reminder, please put your questions into the Q&A, not the general chat, so we're sure to see them. And I've got a few to start, and some questions may be more directed to one speaker or the other, but everyone, please feel free to chime in. So we want it to be a conversation. So in your experience, what is the biggest misconception that people have about pornography use?
I can jump into that. From my experience, it's the idea that it can be done safely. Yeah, and I think we need to ask the question, what is pornography teaching us to do? You know, I speak a lot about the impact of pornography, and I got this question when I was at West Point. This young man came up to me and he said, well, how do I know if I have a problem? How much is too much? And I understand where that comes from, and that's a question we all have to answer. How much is too much? Can I engage in this at any level safely? So my response question is, what is it teaching us to do? What is pornography teaching us to do? Pornography is teaching us to divorce sexuality from humanity, from personhood. It is teaching us to view someone else as a means to an end, as an object of our gratification. So the next question is, can we do that to any level safely, really? Can we say it's okay to objectify an individual for just 1 day a week? It's okay to use someone as a means to a sexual end, to divorce personhood from sexuality 1 day a week. Is it safe to do this for 2 hours? And I think the answer to that question is really trying to see how far we can go. Would we say, well, racism is okay for 2 hours? It's okay to engage in racism just 1 day a week. It's okay to engage in objectifying 1 day a week. The answer to that should be no. It is never okay to objectify someone. It is never safe to treat someone like a means to an end. And like we can see in the research that Mary showed, research shows that at only around 3 hours per week, we're seeing these brain changes. Because when we accept the narrative that it's acceptable to divorce personhood from sexuality, when we accept the narrative that it's okay sometimes to objectify a person, then we have already justified a mindset that's at the heart of abuse and rape. It's never safe, ever.
That is so powerful. People are not means to ends. And I think that's exactly the framing that we need as we approach this issue. Mary, I want to go back to something that you said earlier, that consent can be manipulated. So it's not really an adequate framework for educating about pornography. Can you unpack that a little bit for us? What does that mean?
Well, one of the most difficult things in a court of law is proving consent. And consent can be so easily manipulated. What we're seeing sometimes is that after a sexual encounter has taken place, often with too much drink involved, guys know that if they send a text message the next day and say, oh, thank you so much, I really enjoyed being with you last night, we must do that again sometime, or they know to try and make it look like it was consensual. That's one small thing. One of the challenges is, as I mentioned, around so-called revenge porn, and I see on the chat, Gail had some comments to make about even the use of that term, revenge porn, is that that is sometimes, you know, given consensually in a relationship, but then it stops being consensual afterwards. But I think the biggest problem is that what kids are ingesting when they watch pornography is paid for sex. They see women being either putting up minimum defense that they don't want it, or they're either showing pleasure at the coercive sex, or they're showing minimum resistance. So that teaches young men that you just push hard enough, you'll get what you want. And of course, that's what we're seeing in all the schools, you know, with whether it be with sexting or just the way they're acting out what they do. You just push women enough because they really want it. They really want the sex, and they're just pretending they don't. So that also teaches young women that saying no is not enough, and that, you know, it's completely skewing the whole idea of consent. So I've spoken to lots of young women who are confused because they say, well, I want sex, but I didn't really want to do what he wanted to do, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. So because I wanted to be loved and to have somebody close, I feel that maybe it was consent. So I'm hearing a lot of confusion amongst young women about what it is. And the more that they're seeing pornography on social media and exaggerated behavior in music videos and such like, they think they've got to act that way to get guys' attention. But what they really want to be is loved, and maybe to have a relationship. But what they're having to do to even get anywhere near that is not a loving relationship. And there's a lack of genuine consent. I'm not saying that there aren't some young people who want to be very experimental and quite adventurous in what they want to do, but there are just too many people saying, particularly, I mean, basically young women saying that they are being forced to do stuff they don't want to do. So when that comes to a court case, if they try to, you know, if they decide to report something to the police, it's very difficult later. And the boys are very clever at manipulating that consent and trying to get around it in case anything gets reported to the police.
Well, that is so helpful, so helpful. Laila, so much of what is on Pornhub is obviously not consensual. It's not even about the lines being blurred. Why is Pornhub still able to sell it? What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's because they've been enabled to get away with it, because clearly what they're doing is illegal. They're knowingly benefiting from and enabling, you know, sexual abuse, rape, sex trafficking, all of these things, and they've been doing it with impunity for so long. And I think that really this is the first time there's been this, you know, significant outcry against what they're doing. And I think they're not going to get away with it for very much longer. So I'm just very encouraged to see the way that those, such as even the NCOSE Law Center, have gotten involved, and others around the world have gotten involved, where I truly feel that they will be held accountable, and they won't be able to do this, is the hope, for very much longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on that note, with respect to accountability, how can people get involved in the Traffickinghub campaign? And how can any victims, survivors of Pornhub reach out for assistance?
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to go to traffickinghub.com, and you can sign the petition there. You can watch that 2-minute video. You can share that video with your friends and community. You can, you know, make a donation to the movement there. You can also, you know, get involved with sharing the amazing artwork that there was. I didn't get to mention, but there was this, we did an art competition where we had some just amazing entries into the art competition, powerful pieces that are showing and demonstrating and conveying this injustice. And we just picked our winner, or 5,000 voters just picked their winner. And so you can share that artwork on social media. You can also get the Traffickinghub t-shirt and rep the movement to raise awareness. And if you are a victim, or if you know victims, I think, obviously victims and survivors are really at the heart of this movement and at large, in all of our movements. And so if you are a victim, or others, there's a place on the website where you can enter your information, whatever you're comfortable with. And we have a team that is here to assist you in a variety of ways, from helping to get videos down, to just various ways that we're supporting victims. So I encourage you to be able to submit your information there.
Thank you for sharing that information. That's really helpful. Rachael, you mentioned needing to go below the surface on this issue and talk about our ideas, which I think is really important. What kind of response are you getting to that message, and what kind of ideas are you finding that people have when it comes to these issues?
It's been really interesting. I echo what Laila said. I'm seeing more willingness to discuss the issue than I have typically seen. I'm seeing a little bit more awareness of it. I'm also seeing a huge lack of knowledge. I was at a high school, just for example, recently before COVID hit, and dealt with some of this issue of porn. And I had the chance to sit down with the principal and give her some of the statistics. Hey, this is what's going on in the average high school. This is what's going on in the average lunchroom. This is statistically how many underage girls are reporting being pressured even by their peers for nude photographs, for sexting. And this was all news to this principal. She was blown away at this information, because there are so many things that teachers are dealing with on a daily level, and that principals are dealing with on a daily level. A lot of even our authority figures who are in a position to try to help curb the amount of access that students have to porn, or to be educating on the ramifications of porn, just don't have any idea right now what's really going on. So I've had some very encouraging discussions, but that of course raises a whole new host of issues. What do we do with this? Most school systems, at least from age 5th grade on, are often encouraging their students to bring in their own handheld devices. And so what's taking place, the amount of porn consumption taking place even in the school lunchroom, is just astronomical. And so we even have to start having some of those conversations. How do we deal with technology in the classrooms? How do we equip students to be able to use technology and be educated in the types of technology they need to be, while still putting those safeguards in place? And so I'm seeing more willingness to have the conversation. I'm seeing an extreme lack of knowledge, and still a lot of pushback, a lot of asking that question, well, how much is too much? What can we do safely? And that's just, I think that really has to force us to boil down to the question, well, what's actually taking place in porn? What's taking place in porn is objectifying another individual. That's never safe. That's never acceptable. It's never going to be helpful to society. You can't contain objectification any more than you can contain racism or any other mindset that turns a person into an object and a means to an end. We have to be done with porn.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Mary, going back to the education point and just kind of the knowledge gap that Rachael just highlighted, what do you see as the biggest barrier to making that education in a reality? Is there a movement to bringing that into schools? Kind of what's the status of things there?
Well, I can only talk about what's happening in the UK, and in Scotland they have made relationship and sexual health and parenting education. They've established a new program that will be coming in this year, starting in the autumn, the fall. But it's not compulsory, it's only optional. However, in England and Wales, they are making it compulsory from September onwards. But the challenge is a lot of the teachers don't want to be teaching this stuff. They don't know whether they should be liberal about pornography or if they should be horrified about it. They don't know how to deal with it. So having worked with schools for the past 8 years and listened to teachers, listened to pupils, we've developed our set of lessons that are going to help teachers be able to teach it as a science lesson larger. That's why we focus so much on the brain, because then what young men unfortunately, they're not really interested. They're getting so much pleasure from pornography. They're not interested in the fact that it's dehumanizing women, that it's objectifying. That really goes in one ear and out the other. They're just getting too much pleasure from it. What does get young men's attention is the fear of erectile dysfunction. And it seems to be the only thing that gets their attention. And of course, that's the figures for that are going through the roof. So if we can work that in, while at the same time making girls aware that they don't have to put up with this behavior, and to try and be aware of what actually makes for a loving, trusting, intimate relationship, and think about that, and think about what they're actually getting in relationships, it might help change the narrative a little bit. But just hoping that young men, because it's really young men who are the problem for the most part, just telling them that what they're doing is unacceptable is not going to work for a lot of them. So, so teachers need to feel comfortable and confident in teaching this as this very challenging subject. And young people have got to feel that it's relevant to their lives in what they're doing and what they're facing. So the sexting and how to deal with that in practical ways. So we've attempted to give them tools, social skills, and also technological tools to deal with the pressures that they're facing.
Oh, that's really helpful. And I've got an audience question that is somewhat related to this question. How do you motivate people to take this seriously and to change? So I think that ties in nicely with what you were saying, Merritt. The science around the harms of porn are well researched and more known, but there still doesn't seem to be enough outrage and calls for accountability of porn producers and platforms. The anti-smoking movement gained traction once the harms of secondhand smoke became evident. The general public seemed to care more once they realized the effects it would have on them as non-smokers, so an appeal to self-interest. As a movement, we talk about the harms of porn on the one being used in pornography and the user. Would it be strategic to include more messaging to the general public about how porn use can affect them, even if they aren't watching porn themselves, such as the increase in aggressive behavior toward women that Rachael outlined? Do you think this would help mobilize people when they feel that they're at risk of secondary porn harm? Or do you think that would, and this is for everyone, detract from the harm to those being used in porn as well as the porn user?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think that it's a really smart and strategic to look at history in the way that the anti-smoking campaign was successful. And I think with regard to what I've called secondhand sexual abuse, when we're thinking about children who, as Mary pointed out so eloquently and powerfully, are growing up on this menu of abuse, that are growing up on a menu of assault as their sex education, and what is this doing to them? And it is a form of secondhand sexual abuse to those who are in front of the screen viewing that, and it's a form of firsthand sexual abuse to those who are experiencing that directly, being filmed, being abused and raped and assaulted and all of that. So I think that could be helpful terminology when we speak about children, is to think about it in terms of secondhand sexual abuse. And I think parents and anyone who cares about children and who cares about the future of the world would get on board with wanting to protect children from this specifically.
One of the difficulties that any activist has at the moment is that the porn industry have propagandists using the same playbook as Big Tobacco did back in the 50s and 60s, and the same as the climate change deniers and all sorts are using. Basically, they are creating doubt in the mind of the public, and it's a well-known approach. It's a thing called agnotology. You create doubt in the mind of the public, so that when journalists, and this is why I say we have to educate journalists, when you have journalists on television or newspapers, they always want to have one pro, one against. And what journalists often don't realise is that they are neutralising the argument by having one person say, oh, porn's addictive, and another one saying, no, it's not addictive. The public think, well, you know, obviously it's not clear. The experts, the so-called experts, can't make up their minds. So I don't need to worry about it at the moment. Now, that is a deliberate ploy by the porn industry. They're fielding sexologists, and there is a certain number of them in particular who are incredibly, you know, present in the media. And they deliberately put articles out and they're on television and stuff, and they shout down anybody who says that porn is harmful in any ways. They deliberately ignore the brain science and say if anybody has a problem with porn, it must be an underlying issue. And they refuse to accept that it's porn in itself that can be the root of the problem. And we know that porn is the root of the problem because for so many people, not necessarily everybody, but for so many people, because hundreds of thousands of guys on the porn recovery websites have quit porn, and a lot of the problems, the depression, the lethargy, the erectile dysfunction disappear when they quit porn. So we know there's a cause and effect for an awful lot of people. So unless we educate people, particularly about the brain science and about this, and it sounds hard to teach about brain science, but I'm hoping that we can get it across in a way that people can understand. Unless we educate the public about this, then the porn industry are going to use the same playbook as Big Tobacco did, and keep like Big Tobacco did for 20 years, the link between smoking and lung cancer and the fact that nicotine was addictive was in doubt. Well, we can't let that happen with pornography, because we're seeing a generation of young people's lives, their loved lives, destroyed by the free, ready availability of pornography.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a really important comparison to the Big Tobacco playbook, and a really helpful analogy. A follow-up question, I think for you, Mary, from the audience: why do some adolescents become addicted to porn in comparison to their peers?
Well, every brain's different, as I said, and some people are bigger sensation seekers than others, and some boys and girls mature more quickly than others. And so that exuberance of adolescence, they want to learn, they want to be good at things, so they're reading up, they're looking at everything they can on the internet to try and learn to be good. So as we know from the research, the early adopters, the younger children are at learning and using pornography, the faster they escalate to using it more and to becoming problematic users. So some people maybe have underlying issues. They maybe had, you know, more chaotic childhoods, which means they have a dysregulated stress system, which will predispose them more towards using pornography as a coping mechanism, perhaps for their stress. But it's like a double whammy. Using that is also going to lead to more problems as well. I think it's just the fact that some brains are different, and that's why, you know, everybody has got to learn for themselves. Some people might be able to look at quite a lot of pornography and not be too affected. But, you know, this is going to, we need to do a lot more research to see what's happening. But we do know that the more you use, and the more likely you are to escalate to the more intense material that is causing the brain changes that lead to the depressions, the erectile dysfunctions, and so forth. So I think everybody just needs to be educated and then work it out for themselves.
Here's another audience question. Often movements succeed by taking the one next step over the long haul. What do each of you view as the one next step in seeing public awareness about the harms of pornography furthered in a substantive way? Warning labels on porn, like were utilized decades ago with cigarettes, focusing on educating on the link between big porn, big tech, big pharma. One for everyone.
We think age verification is critically important. All governments have to realise what's happening. They talk about the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a porn pandemic, and it's a hidden pandemic because we can't see the changes that are taking place in people's brains, and it sort of incubates over years. But we know from the huge rise in young people with mental health problems that it is a good chance that the exposure to so much pornography, particularly in lockdown, is going to result in more problems. So age verification, which unfortunately the UK government kicked into the long grass just before the general election, you know, would have helped so many kids not stumble across it. But we were involved with running a conference last month on age verification. There's a report on our website, and if anybody wants to know about that, 29 countries from 5 continents took part to look at what were the mistakes made by the UK government, what lessons are to be learned, and what can countries do to introduce age verification in their own country, because that's going to be one of the most important steps we can do to reduce this.
I think to piggyback off of that, a lot of legislation is where I have a lot of focus. And one of the aspects of legislation that we really have to deal with here in the US is how do we enforce something like that? Because I agree wholeheartedly with Mary. When we can start getting these kids younger, stop the exposure at such a young age through age verification that gives the brain more time to develop, we can pass that law. How do we motivate companies to follow it? Because here in the US, one thing that we face frequently is the ability to sue and hold civilly accountable or even criminally accountable. A place like Pornhub is severely limited by our archaic understanding of free speech legislation, not having any kind of framework for how we deal with internet porn sites that are distributing porn but may not be producing it themselves, which is some of how Pornhub has managed to escape civil liability. Is they've been able to say, hey, we're just conglomerating, and everybody else is responsible for what they put up there. We're not responsible for the content everybody else puts on. And so we also have to have some kind of legislative reform that allows there to be teeth behind these requirements. That where if a company like Pornhub does not require age verification, there's something law enforcement can actually do about it. There's something that the victims can actually do about it to receive recovery. Because the ultimate reality, you know, and I say this to my kids all the time, when my kids do something, 4 kids, 8, 6, 5, and just turned 2, and when they do something that harms another person, I say to them, look, there are 2 reasons you can choose to do what's right. You can choose to do what's right because you love the person who is around you, and you don't want that person to suffer the consequences of your bad behavior. But if you're not going to choose to do what's right out of love, mommy and daddy are going to have to put consequences in place that will help motivate you to make the right decision. You don't want to lose your privilege. You know, you don't want to sit in timeout. And that is ultimately our decision-making matrix. All of us have two things that can motivate us. We can be motivated by love, or we can be motivated by fear of the consequences. And what MindGeek and Pornhub and these conglomerates and distributors have shown over and over and over again is they're certainly not motivated by care for the people around them. That only leaves us the option of having negative consequences that motivate them to say, hey, it's going to cost us too much if we violate this age verification. It's going to cost us too much if we don't have proper consent procedures in place. But right now, legislatively, the law enforcement's hands and the victim's hands are largely tied. There's no teeth behind that kind of reform. So the very first thing we have to do is massive reform on all of this legislation so that we can get those things in place, but we also have mechanisms for enforcing them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's common sense legislation would be a 2257 type law that applies to the porn sites, which the porn tubes, they would have been fighting so hard, you know, through their funding of the Free Speech Coalition. But yes, mandatory third-party age and consent verification for every single person and every single video uploaded to the site. I think obviously it would cause an increase in friction in the amount of videos that would be uploaded. It would disturb the business model for sure. But I think that would go a long way in at least helping to prevent these videos of, you know, the terrorism against women, image-based abuse videos and things like that from getting uploaded to these sites. But I also think that we're in a unique time right now where we are starting to be able to kind of exploit that chink in the armor of the the porn conglomerates, the MindGeek of the world, in that they have this cover narrative that they've been standing on. It's really the pillar on which they're able to continue to exploit with impunity without backlash from the public, in that these are consenting adults. I don't care if you don't like that she's crying. I don't care if you don't like this or that. These are consenting adults, and this is my, this is free speech and all of that. And really just completely being able to destroy that myth and that pillar upon which they stand to prove that this is not all consenting adults. In many cases, these are women and children being raped and assaulted and abused for profit on these sites. And I think that'll really go a long way in just changing the public narrative about the industry from one that says, you may not like it, but these are consenting adults, to hold on, these are victims. These are, women and children who are being exploited on these sites. And I think that would really help.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really is a two-step approach, because you have the illegal content, which is just a massive factor at driving Pornhub and these other conglomerates. But even when we get rid of that, we still have the quote unquote legal content. And then we've got those questions of, can somebody actually consent to this? What, is there a pimp behind the scenes that's motivating this? But even if you can get all of that cleaned up and you have totally quote unquote legal porn, you still have those brain changes happening, because you have the chemical and the dopamine release, like Mary talked about, in response to violent sexuality. So in addition to dealing with all of the illegal content that's on there and changing that narrative, hey, this is not a consenting adult, this is abuse, this is rape, it's monetized trafficking, we also have to continue dealing with the educational aspect of it, of this is what porn is doing to our culture, this is what it's doing to the brain, this is what it's doing to men and to women and to adolescents. And because especially during this time frame, with a lot of the conversation that Laila's been able to generate around Pornhub, there's a lot more of that discussion starting to happen. And so as part of all of this, my hope is that we will continue seeing a massive educational push to help people start grasping what's really taking place, so that we can really have both dynamics.
Thank you all for all of those thoughts. We've seen just a massive and encouraging response from so many people in response to the Traffickinghub campaign. But Laila, one listener wants to know, have you had any response at all from Pornhub in response to the Traffickinghub campaign?
Yes, they've been very aggressive in the media. They've been gaslighting survivors publicly online. They've been calling me a liar, saying that I'm factually inaccurate and intentionally misleading is their term of choice. They've been using ad hominem attacks, and I call them their minions, kind of deploying their minions to kind of attack the campaign, trying to frame it as some kind of religious moral crusade against sexuality and all of these things, when in reality it's clearly not that, as it's supported by so many people around the world and so many different organizations that coming from all different kinds of backgrounds. But I guess what I've been encouraged in and seeing their response is that they're not, if they're having to resort to those kinds of attacks in defense of this campaign, you really know that they don't have a defense, because if they did, they would have deployed that a long time ago to, defend themselves against these, the evidence out there and these allegations, which they're not allegations. There's evidence that this is happening. So the fact that they're using that tactic is actually very encouraging to me, because I know that they're kind of a bit desperate if that's what they're going for.
Have you kind of, on a somewhat related note, have you gotten any kind of response from people who are users of pornography, who see this campaign and their eyes are open to what's really going on? What kind of response have you seen there?
I've seen daily those who have been consumers of Pornhub, and many who've been struggling against addiction for a long time and felt like this was kind of finally that last bit of motivation that they needed to know that when they go on a site like Pornhub, they don't know if they're getting their pleasure from somebody else's pain. In many cases, obviously they are, and that this was just, so horrifying to them that they had to stop, that they, the moment I heard, yesterday someone said the moment I signed the petition was the last day that I viewed pornography. And so I think that this is really helping to motivate people and open their eyes to the harms that they're participating in and fueling and are complicit in by viewing the content.
So I have a question for everyone. All of you are doing amazing work. What motivates you to keep on going despite the attacks against all of us and the fact that sometimes this kind of work feels like we're fighting an unwinnable battle?
I guess I could just, I mean, that's a difficult question, but, you know, and there's many different answers probably that I could even think of. But, you know, one is like, what does our world look like if we don't do this? You know, if we give up and we kind of just throw our hands up and surrender to what's going on, you know, what does the future look like for our kids and just the future of the world? And I think that, you know, when we think of it like that, there's no choice. We have no choice but to stand up and to resist this massive evil exploitation, this force of destruction in our world. For me personally, that battle is looking, you know, like the fight against MindGeek, but, you know, for all of us, it manifests in different ways. But truly, I think that, you know, we really have no choice but to fight and fight hard, because this is a massive industry that is completely destroying the lives of so many countless men, women, and children. And we've got to stand up against it and put an end to it.
I would say too, when I get phone calls from friends who've discovered that their husbands are porn addicts and how devastated perhaps the partner has felt at, you know, she can no longer trust the husband or whatever. I see young kids in schools, their lives are being destroyed by pornography. I just think I have some knowledge that might be able to help some people. And in the years that I've been working in this field, I know that when people get knowledge about the brain and that they've got control over it, that they don't have to be victims of the culture. We are the culture. We can change the culture by our behavior, but we need to know how to do it. So I'm certainly driven by teaching what I can, learning what I can and teaching it to others, listening to others to hear how I can improve my arguments and improve the facts and even the way of communicating, so that people are willing to start listening and maybe start changing their behavior. So I just want people to have good relationships, because I know the benefit of loving relationships. And I find it heartbreaking that so many millions of kids today are sleepwalking into chaos. So that's what drives me.
I would definitely echo all of that. For me, it really comes down to that question: what is a person worth? And the intrinsic value of human life and care for the people around you. The impacts of porn and abuse on both the consumers and those who are at the receiving end of abuse is dramatically life-changing. And that's something that we have to care about. If we care about the value of human life, we have to care about these issues. And you're right, it's not, being engaged in advocacy is not an easy task. It's exhausting. You're exposed to so much evil and so much darkness all the time. And it's important for me personally to define what I consider success properly. If I put a benchmark up of success will be this, it will be shutting down the porn industry, it will be stopping child abuse, it will be passing XYZ legislation. If that's my benchmark and I don't reach it as fast as I think I should, it can really set me up for an end justifies the means approach, or for just exhaustion and burnout. It doesn't matter anymore. It just doesn't matter what I do. It's too big. So defining success properly is really important for me. And I think success is most properly defined as being faithful with what you've been given. Be faithful with your social media platforms. Be faithful with your circle and sphere of influence. Be faithful in ministering to the survivors around you. Be faithful in your own habits. Be faithful in speaking the truth where you can, everywhere you can. And that's really all any of us can do. We have to be faithful with what we've been given, because the results are outside of our control. But what we can control is what we do with what's given to us.
Thank you for that, all of you. I see a number of questions related to making pornography illegal. So I just want to clarify something really quickly, which is that obviously, as we've discussed already, sex trafficking, child sexual abuse images, pornography made through rape is obviously illegal. But what's also important to understand is that obscenity is illegal as well, which is roughly under US law defined as material that is meant to be sexually exciting, that depicts sexual conduct in an extremely offensive manner, and that lacks any kind of literary, scientific, artistic, or political value. So that's the definition, more or less, under US law. And all of that, all the content that falls within that is already illegal, which would be basically most hardcore pornography. Even if it is somehow consensual, it's already illegal. It's just not really being enforced. It's not being prosecuted. So just want to clarify that. Moving to another audience question for everyone, I think. What is the best way to educate our male friends on pornography?
Well, we've certainly seen a lot of young men respond well to Gary Wilson's TEDx talk, The Great Porn Experiment, but more importantly, probably his book, Your Brain on Porn, Internet Pornography and the Emerging Science of Addiction, that I mentioned in my talk, because it's kind of written for young men. It's got hundreds of recovery stories, lots of tips, and it's got the science explained really well. And I think it takes all the morality away. They're not feeling blamed and shamed. This is how your brain works. This is a changed environment. And this is how your brain can be overstimulated by something you think is just the best thing ever. So we recommend that where possible for young men to just read. And when we talk about it or when we show the video, it goes down extremely well. And we know from thousands of guys on the porn recovery websites that it was knowledge about the brain that gave them the courage to quit porn or to experiment with quitting porn. So that's certainly something that we recommend.
I would echo that, and having those conversations where you can, when you can. Again, all of us have spheres of influence. We have our social media platforms. You have the water cooler at work, or at least pre-COVID we did, and hopefully post-COVID we will too. We have our physical communities. We have our religious communities. For some of us, our scientific communities, academic communities. All of us have a sphere of influence. So let's start having these conversations. Let's start using the platforms that we have to start that discussion of, hey, here's what it's actually doing to the brain. Here are the societal consequences for accepting this myth that pornography is this harmless thing that we can engage in. And the more we have those discussions and that we can point to the science, the book that Mary recommended is absolutely excellent. The more that we can help people understand what's actually going on, it removes that question from the equation of, well, can I do it just a little bit? How far can I go? How much is too much? How do I know if I really have a problem? Well, let's talk about the science. Let's talk about what this is, how this is conditioning you to think about people. Let's talk about this idea that we can contain objectifying an individual, and it's okay just sometimes. And when we start having those discussions in the platforms that we have, that's how we change the culture. Like Mary said, we are the culture. Let's use the platforms we have to start changing that narrative, start changing that discussion, and let's do it in ways that are most effective, explaining what's going on and what we're really doing when we accept these porn myths.
Mm-hmm. I would also just thank you. I don't really have much more to add to that, but I did see a question about racism in porn, and I think that is an important thing for us to be, highlighting, especially in this moment around the world where we are, coming to grips with serious issues of racism in our culture. And there's been an excellent article by Gail Dines recently out in the media that we can link to, and I wrote something for the New York Post a few weeks ago as well. But on MindGeek on sites, and on Pornhub, there is extreme forms of racism, and there are people who are accessing that material and it's one thing to just watch it or to kind of passively sit by as kind of extreme racism plays out in our culture. It's another thing to be getting pleasure from that extreme racism and degradation of people of color. And I think that it's something that is, I guess society is ready to have this conversation. And I think that we really need to focus on bringing pornography into that conversation about racism and highlighting that companies like Pornhub and MindGeek are not only enabling this to be put out to the masses as masturbation material, but profiting off of it as well.
Thank you for that. We are just about at 5 o'clock. So for all of you, do you have any final words for our audience? 30 seconds or less.
Please be brave in learning about the brain. It seems like it might be too hard, but there's some great materials out there on a variety of sites. Fight the New Drug, Your Brain on Porn. We've done our best on our site and hope to improve it. There's lots of good websites. Culture Reframed, excellent resource for parents explaining this stuff. So just go and learn what you can and have confidence that you have the knowledge to communicate with children and with others about how to be better people and have a happier life.
Be faithful with what you have. Again, all of us have our spheres of influence. Take what you've learned and be faithful to use those platforms. Talk to your school systems. Talk to your school boards. What are we doing to educate our kids? What's going on in our sex ed curriculum? How early are we starting to teach some of these dangers? Use your social media platforms. Use your physical community to speak the truth where you can. Be faithful with what you've been given.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I just want to encourage everybody who's watching this now or would watch it later to know that, you know, your voice does have power. And what I've seen through this Traffickinghub campaign that has just truly blown me away, I would have never expected this to happen the way it has. And I just truly believe it's because just one after one after one adds up to 1 million and adds up to more. And, you know, just feeling like your voice matters and not thinking that you have to leave it up to the big organizations or the politicians or, you know, those in these special positions of influence and power, but that truly it's about all of us kind of joining together and creating kind of this mass outcry together against this injustice. And just not discounting yourself from that, but just knowing that you are important and that you can make a difference by just, you know, doing what you can where you are.
Thank you all for that. We are at time, so I encourage everyone to continue this important conversation through meetups and in the Whova app. If you are a survivor of the pornography industry, just want to let you know there will be a meetup tomorrow with the NCOSE Law Center attorneys. If you want to talk about anything, that will be at 12 p.m. Eastern time. And a huge thank you to Rachael, Mary, and Laila for sharing your expertise and courage and passion with all of us today. We're so grateful for your voices, and this has been challenging and I think motivating for all of us. So thank you all. Have a good evening.